Usual reminders that my name is Anna from Expat Realty. Expat Realty is a real estate relocation and real estate agency based in Portugal that helps expats move to Portugal with the least headaches possible and make great real estate purchases. We are a bit like buyer agents, but we englobe the whole relocation process from visa to actually settling. So, hi Barmis, nice to see you. Helena is much easier. I'm terrible with names sometimes, we forgive you. Forgive me, never mind. So, lovely to see you too. Once again, reminder, if you do not catch the live, it's fine. You can always see all my videos later on the video tab on our Facebook page, Expat Realty. All of them go there, you can watch them offline. And of course, please do leave comments and let me know if you have any questions. I do reply to them straight away if they are on the topic I am speaking about. If they are not on the topic, I will go back to them at the end of the live. So do let me know if there's anything you want to know, and I will come back to you as soon as possible. If you are watching this offline, then you can leave the comments and someone in my team or me will also come back to you unless we don't get the notification, which rarely happens. So today I am going to talk to you about common expat misconceptions. And these are things that people that come from outside Portugal just assume it how it works, but then come here and, well, maybe it isn't how it works. And it's a bit of culture clashes, but it's also a bit different. But the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is actually the division of the map of Portugal. That is something that is very confusing for a lot of Portuguese people, that we don't know how the hell the expats came up with this creative division. We don't know where it came from. I really don't. I would love to. If you know where it comes from, please let me know. So that's the first thing I'm going to talk to you about. So I printed a map of Portugal here because lovely Facebook doesn't let me screen share. And this is how the expats or expat communities tend to see Portugal. So there is this Silver Coast thing. Then there's the Algarve, that's often called the Gold Coast, and apparently the north here is called the Green Coast. What's up with that? I really never heard of such a thing. I have no idea where this comes from. Actually, the first time I heard the term Silver Coast was when I was working in tourism in the Algarve. And people were like, oh no, the Algarve is really expensive, you should just go to the Silver Coast. And I'm like, what's that? Like, Portuguese people that don't work with tourism don't know what the hell the Silver Coast is. Actually, the reason that the rest of us do is that because at some point they have heard someone asking, oh, I'll go to the Silver Coast. Because that's not a term that we use here at all, really. No one uses that in Portugal. Only the people that work constantly with foreigners know the term. And that's another confusing thing, because I don't know exactly what the Silver Coast is. Because, for example, in this map that I found online, they consider the Silver Coast the area north of Lisbon, just under Porto. But I've seen a lot of places and a lot of people talk about the Silver Coast as the whole Atlantic coast, including the Alentejo Litoral, so that's the ocean area next to Alentejo here. And I still don't know. So that's not a thing. Gold Coast, Silver Coast, Green Coast, it's not a thing. The only reason we know what that is because we interact with expats. So the way that it actually works is something like this. So if you want the general division, we have 5 areas. We have the north on the top, you have the center on the center, you have then the Lisbon area that can be either englobating just this two or this part two. It's inverted, so I get a bit lost. Don't worry. And then you have the Alentejo and the Algarve. So that's how we usually divide things, as opposed to this, that is pretty much the touristic division. So this is the general division, and then if you want to divide it in a bit more detail, it would be something like this. So let me see. Yeah, okay. So you have on the top interior Minho, and we often call this Minho and Douro Interior. So this area on the top here. Then you have Trás-os-Montes e Alto Douro. So that's the coastal side, coastal half of the north. Then you have Beira Alta. Then you have it's the opposite, because I keep forgetting that I'm seeing things. You are seeing things opposite to me. So the literal is Douro and Minho, and then the inside is Trás-os-Montes. So Beira Alta is interior center, Beira Litoral is coastal center, what you apparently call the Silver Coast, and Beira Baixa is interior lower side. Then you have Extremadura, that is the litoral including Lisbon, so the central litoral. You have Ribatejo, that it's just next to it, just literal central, so real center. You have Alto Alentejo, that is the interior north of Portugal, interior north of Alentejo, so here. And then you have Baixo Alentejo, that is just above the Algarve, so this slice here. And of course the Algarve. So that's how Portuguese people actually divide things. And that whole silver, green, gold coast is not a thing. So if you are going to start talking to Portuguese people about regions of Portugal, don't use those terms, because most of the Portuguese people will get confused. And even people that work with foreigners and expats like I do sometimes get confused, because I honestly don't know exactly who came up with it and how they divide it. So it's always better to know what the actual regions are. So that's the misconception number one. Another common misconception is, it's not really a misconception, but people come to Portugal expecting that everything will be perfect and welcoming and cheap. And well, it's not perfect. Nothing is. There's a lot of low things, not so good things. And one of the things that can be quite a culture clash and quite a misconception is Portugal has kind of a glass half full negative mentality, in a way that one of the very common sayings in Portuguese is that basically that you are only a thief if you get caught, and that generates a lot of negative thoughts and bad politicians. People really like to criticize the politicians, but then there's also the thing where people complain a lot, but there's not a lot of people that will actually go and do things. So it's a lot of can't do attitudes, and that's something that you will find a lot in customer service. And customer service can be extremely frustrating in Portugal, especially public services and customs and so on. So there are very good customer services places, but they are usually private and specialized. Like, for example, most of the hotels in the Algarve have great customer services because that's something they specialized on. And another interesting thing is that even the locals, people from Lisbon, tend to complain that there's a much worse customer service in Lisbon and support and general, just, bedside table manner than there is in the north. In the north, people are much more empathic, so to say, and they connect with you a lot more in a way. So that's one of the things that can be a bit of a shock for expats. And another interesting thing that's you really need to get used to wait. There's a lot of waiting in Portugal in general, in services, for getting letters, for getting packages. If you're coming from a US or a country where you get next day delivery, there's no such thing here. Actually, I made like 3 orders in the weekend that supposedly are shipped in 24 hours, and I'm still waiting for them. So I hope they arrive by Friday because I'm going to Porto on Friday. So here in Portugal, it's always better. Like if they tell you it's going to be ready by Friday, plan to have it 2 weeks after. Like it's pretty much how it goes. Everything is slow. Public services are slower. Everything. Public services are really bad. And another thing that as an expat you are going to find infuriating is customs. Customs are absolutely a nightmare. And unless you really need to have something coming from outside Europe, make it come from inside Europe, because customs are an absolute nightmare and they charge you way too much and get things stuck, and it just takes really long and it's really frustrating to deal with them. So either get yourself a triangular operation, and that means get it sent to somewhere where there is no customs or there is much easier customs inside Europe, and then get it to Portugal, or get it from Europe, because you really don't want to deal with customs, believe me. I've been there, done that. So hi Michelle, nice to see you. So that's very frustrating things on the service side. And I'm going to go back a bit on this topic at the end, but these are some of the things that you should take into consideration. Then, another thing that can be a bit frustrating is that some people come here and they just expect to learn the language quite easy. And it's not that easy. It's not that it's impossible, but Portuguese is a rather complicated language, and you're going to have nightmares about the grammar, believe me. There's a meme that I sometimes come across that it's like the verbs conjugations in English and then in Portuguese, and in Portuguese you have like 20 different versions. So you are going to struggle a bit with that. And then there's even another problem with learning the language is that Portugal is one of the highest proficiency of English in the world. I think it's rated 7 in the world for English proficiency. And that means that most people, when they hear you speak with an accent or hear you struggle with Portuguese, instead of speaking Portuguese with you for you to train, they will likely start speaking with you in English, and that doesn't help with training. So the whole English proficiency thing, it's actually going to difficult your life when it comes to actually learning the Portuguese language, because 1, the Portuguese language is rather complicated, and 2, lots of people speak English and they just will likely go the path of less resistance, that is speaking English with you. And I am guilty of that, to be honest. Even if clients ask me to speak in Portuguese, I will likely start speaking in English because it just makes things faster, because I'm very fluent in English. So that's a problem you will likely face if you are going to try and learn Portuguese. So another thing, I actually already went over this, that is time frames and paperwork. A lot of waiting. And yes, paperwork and bureaucracies can be a pain in general. So you generally have a lot of paperwork to deal with, pretty much with everything. Town halls and yeah, Michelle is saying that she puts sticky notes all over her house with different sentences on them in Portuguese. That's a good strategy, I think. The problem is actually getting to practice them, but I really hope you do very soon, as much as possible. So, sorry, I was talking to you about the paperwork. Bureaucracies in Portugal are a nightmare, and everything is very slow, and public service especially will drive you crazy. They are generally understaffed, and over bureaucratic, plus the can-do attitude that you see a lot in service, and especially in public service, because there is very little consequence for public service. For example, I'm dealing right now with a situation with a client when we are waiting just for a paper to proceed with the deed, and that said paper has been requested with a 24-hour urgency fee that was paid, and that 24-hour urgency fee was paid on the 29th of December. So and they obviously didn't do the urgency, and now are also not even doing the regular timeline. So that's something you will need to be prepared to deal with in Portugal. That is paperwork, bureaucratic stuff, and delays. Be very prepared for that. So actually, I should have gone over this topic right after the whole Portugal map thing. But another very common thing that confuses me a bit is that people think that it's cold in the north and hot in the south, and that's just how it goes. It's not really how it goes. Sure, in the Algarve and the Alentejo, overall the average temperature is a bit higher than in the north, but overall Portugal has a very mean climate, meaning that temperature generally don't have too high or too low. Where they do get the highest is in Algarve and Alentejo. Actually, Alentejo is the worst. And then in the interior areas, you usually have a much more drastic temperature difference. So you will have very high temperatures on the summer and very low temperatures on the winter. And by low here, as you know, in Portugal, there is not that much low temperatures. I saw snow for the first time in my life when I was like 17, and I went to the Alps with my brother because I went to visit him in Barcelona, and we were just commenting, oh, me and my younger brother never saw snow. And so he took us to the French Alps, just because it was close by, and I saw snow for the first time at 17. So snow, it's not, in very cold temperatures, is not something that you should be expecting to have in Portugal. However, it does have, there are some regions where it does get a bit colder, and it's mostly on the interior. The coastal regions usually don't get that cold. It's very rare to go below 5. Yeah, and 10 degrees, it's an average temperature for the winter. And in the interior, it goes like -2, -5, but that's the coldest it will get. The problem is the insulation here is terrible. And I actually was talking about that. So that's one of my 10 topics of things to misconceptions, is that lots of people come here expecting to have very comfortable lives inside their houses. For example, if you go to the US or to Switzerland or to the UK or to Norway or to Sweden, in all these locations you will have very comfortable inside living, and all the places will be climatized and temperature controlled, and you just suffer cold or heat when you're outside. It's not the case in Portugal. Just in the commercial spaces, most of the private homes have no climatization at all, and people just use heaters and so on. It's actually the case in the house I'm living in right now. And it's not common practice to have climatization systems installed and the house fully climatized. And that's something I discussed with my aunts back on Christmas, because apparently they think it's because back in the day, people thought that very harsh differences of temperature would make you sick. So they didn't want to make their houses too hot, because when they would go outside, they would become sick with the temperature shock. And they think that's one of the big reasons Portugal is taking so long to adopt the climatization practices that are already the norm in many other countries. I don't know if that's the reason or not. I think it's probably also the reason for the fact that the electricity in Portugal is quite expensive. That's also another one of my expat misconceptions. Everything is cheap. No, not everything is cheap, and also the prices are rising. The one of the things that are very expensive here in Portugal is gasoline and petrol. It's very, very expensive, and electricity, it's also quite expensive, especially considering the cost of living. And like I said, the cost of living is rising, but it's mostly for the Portuguese. For the expats perspective, it's not that bad. And that brings me to yet another misconception, that is jobs. If you come here with a job from your country of origin and the salary from your country of origin, you will have a great quality of life. Helena is asking me here, what would be the best system to install for both air conditioning and heating, along with isolation, of course. So basically, there are the most popular systems are usually the reversible air conditioning that does both heating and cooling, and they are very energy efficient ones nowadays. So they can be quite a good investment for a location that doesn't have anything pre-installed. If you are building, there's a number of solutions you can install into your framework of your house. One of them is floor heating, that is becoming quite popular on higher end living arrangements that get construction, especially villas, and it can be quite comfortable. The other common heating solution is the gas heating, which is not the best because it's quite expensive. We have it on our farmhouse, and it ends up being quite expensive, and because it's a stone property, it takes very long to heat. So you should analyze it according to each property. So that's something we also help our clients with making this kind of decisions on the renovations they may need, and connecting them with experts for all of those things. So going back to the job market, that's what I was going over. Some people come here and think they will be able to find a job and have a nice quality of life with a local job. That's very unlikely. It's going to be very hard to do that because the salaries in Portugal are quite low. Our minimum wage is 600 something euros. I don't pay anyone minimum wage, so I don't even remember how much it is, but minimum wage is quite low. Truth is, most Portuguese people cannot afford to live on their own, and definitely cannot do that on a minimum wage unless they are in an interior location with a very low rent, because in the big cities that's not the case at all. The prices of rents have been rising, as well as real estate, very fast, and for a local salary it's very, very hard to have a nice quality of life. However, if you are coming on a salary from the US, from the UK, from Sweden, from Norway, from any country that has much better working conditions, we will have a very good life in Portugal, because Portugal has many other things to offer, such as the great climate, the great landscapes, the culture, the great foods that can be dangerous. And there's a lot of other things that will contribute to you having a great quality of life in Portugal, but the job market is definitely not one of them. So let me see what the reasons that I haven't went over yet. I went up and down, but then I will read them to you the way I have written them in the end. If you do have any questions for me, do not hesitate to ask. I will reply them as soon as I see them, or if they are off topic at the end of the live. So I've been over the names of the areas and the expat names. I've been over the job, I've been over learning the language, the time frames and paperwork, the it's cold in the north and hot in the south, the not everything is cheap, the installation of and lack of thereof, and the tourist price versus local price. This is actually a thing. This is not a misconception. It's true. There is locations that are definitely made towards tourists, and that is particularly easy to see in the Algarve. If you look back in our videos, there is a video that I talk about living conditions in different areas of Portugal with my different agents in different areas of Portugal, and you will see that a lot of things are very different in the Algarve, because the Algarve kind of ends up being like an expat community. I'm pretty sure there only in like Faro and Portimão there is still more locals than expats. I'm pretty sure in pretty much everywhere else are more foreigners than Portuguese people in the Algarve, and that creates a whole different kind of market and a whole different kind of economy, and that of course creates the tourist prices, and that of course also happens in the very touristic locations. So there are definitely the tourist restaurants and the local restaurants. That's actually something we often go over in our tours with clients. We always try to take them to the tascas that usually are not that pretty on the outside, but they will give you great cheap food. So we always try to give our clients the true Portuguese experience, and then they can compare on their own to the expat things. Truth is, I'm also kind of a foodie, and I do enjoy going to a high-end restaurant now and then. But there are a lot of places that are clearly just made for tourists and are not that good at all for the price they charge. But of course, there are a few that are truly good. But compared to the local prices, there is a huge difference. Like in the Algarve, paying 20 euros per person for a meal, it's perfectly normal and expected. If you go to Porto, you can get a meal for like 6-7 euros in the restaurant. 10 euros a full course with a soup, main meal, and then dessert. Of course, this is getting less and less often, and if you go to the interior, it's even less than that. You can still find meals for like 5 euros. But like I said, supply and demand and existence in the market and the buying power in the market makes a lot of difference. And of course, the rents in this location have also risen very drastically. Michelle is saying that the bread is amazing. Yes, and we have a lot of different breads. I'm sure you have tried. One of my favorites is actually broa, the corn bread, the yellow one. I really like it, but I only eat it like once a year. You know, with butter. And I'm trying to make a diet now, so I shouldn't talk too much about food. It's not very easy to make a diet in Portugal because you have so much amazing food. Another thing that I talk a lot about in my other videos, and you've probably seen me ranting over it over and over, is the real estate market and service. So especially if you're coming from the US, you are used to there being buyer agents and seller agents, and that makes perfect sense because there's an obvious conflict of interest on representing both. But that's not the case in here and in a lot of countries of Europe. And in the real estate market in particular, the regulation or lack thereof is absolutely terrible. So it's ridiculously easy to get a real estate license, and they don't even require any sort of testing or verification, basically anything. So unless you have that knowledge on your own from previous experiences like I do, given my family background on real estate investment, and I've dealt with pretty much everything regarding family property, there's a lot of people that don't really know what they're doing, and this leads to a lot of people buying places and being misled. So just this week I was talking to a renovation specialist that was telling me that one of the big problems that he is facing is that expats that fall in love with beautiful Portuguese typical homes and have these amazing renovation projects that everyone told them it would be possible to do, especially the agents. But then when they actually come to them and start discussing the details, they find out that they can't really do what they wanted to do. So that's one of the problematic things that this generates. And I'm actually probably going to do a video with this expert to give you some more details about expectations and managing renovations, because that's also a thing that's very common. Lots of foreigners that come here and look to buy a traditional Portuguese home. I believe there are more people renovating properties, more expats renovating properties in Portugal than actually Portuguese people. And one of the reasons is probably because there's a lot of bureaucracy and complications in dealing with contractors and dealing with limitations by town hall and so on, plus the costs. And also lots of Portuguese people don't really value the whole traditional cultural side of things and kind of tend to prefer to raise the building and build a new one than recovering it. Thankfully, there is a lot of laws that don't allow to do that now, so it doesn't really happen nearly as much as it used to. But I do think that we have amazing architecture and amazing homes that definitely are worth renovating. But you should be very, very careful on going around it, because usually the seller will tell you that you can do everything just to get it sold, and that's often not the case. So it's always nice to have someone looking after your actual interests and take things with a grain of salt on the real estate industry in general. I know it's suspicious coming from me given I kind of work with it, but the reason that I started this business is exactly because I don't like the way that things work, and I wanted to do things differently in a way that I think would be fair. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And like I said, I've dealt a lot with property due to my family real estate investment history. So I think these are the 10. I already went to 10 reasons, that 10 expat misconceptions that I have here. I'm just going to reread them so to make sure. So the first one were the names of the areas of Portugal. Silver Coast is not a thing. The second one is getting a job with nice pay. That's also not a very likely thing. And also another thing is it's fairly hard to get a job if you don't speak Portuguese. It's not impossible. Actually, knowing languages is a big plus, because lots of customer support agencies and just teleworking agencies are starting to work from Portugal, and many of them look for people that speak specific languages, so that can work in your favor. But there is a lot more offer on the market for people that actually speak Portuguese, and that can be a big factor in making things a lot harder to find a job. So the third one is the service industry. That is a mess here. So the whole Portuguese has amazing services is not true. It doesn't. There are some good services, but in the majority you will have a bit of clash on that, and especially on the response times. The renovations of property that I just went over, the renovations are not easy. The learning the language, that's the fifth one. I should be saying the numbers. So we're on the five. Learning the language. There are going to be barriers on that. It's not going to be as easy as you likely think it will. 6 is the time frames and paperwork. Once again, expect delays and expect complications. 7 is it's cold on the north and hot in the south. Also not true. 8 is not everything is cheap. Not everything is cheap. 9 is insulation, or lack thereof it. and 10 is tourist prices versus local prices. So those are the 10 common expat misconceptions that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed my video. As I told in the beginning, all my videos go to the video tab on our Facebook page, Savvy Cat Realty. You can watch any of them offline later, and we will come back to your comments. Any comments you come offline, we definitely encourage them. Thank you so much for watching us. Thank you, Nathit. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Helena. I really enjoy having you here with me. I'll see you all next week. I don't know yet what I'm going to talk to you about, but I'm sure I'll figure something out and I'll be in Porto then. So I hope you all have a wonderful week and see you soon. Bye now.